In this video, we are going to talk about the F5 Service Center, which is built on the Cisco ACI App Center platform. The F5 Service Center provides a direct, easy, and efficient way to provision application services in an ACI and BIG-IP deployment. Let's start by looking at the prerequisites that need to be configured on the APIC before using the app. Under Tenant Services, L4, L7 Device Configuration, let's configure a logical device cluster. In this example, we are going to take a standalone BIG-IP configured as part of the logical device cluster using VLAN tags 21 and 22. Under Service Graph Template, a template has been created using the logical device cluster that we are taking as the example. And this service graph is in deployed and applied state. Now let's turn our attention to the app, which is under the Apps tab, and look at the first use case, visibility. Once the app is launched, click on Open. You will see a list of BIG-IP devices being managed by the app, or if this is the first time the app is being launched, you have the option to add a new device as well. Once you log in, you will see the BIG-IP information as shown in red. There are different tables. The VLAN table right now has no objects present since we have not configured anything yet. Now let's look at the virtual IP table. Here we see the virtuals, the pools, and the nodes that are assigned to the virtual. The status of the nodes, the pools, and the virtuals is being pulled from the BIG-IP based on the monitors. Each node is also associated to a APIC, tenant, app, and EPG. If we look at the APIC under app, EPG, and the operationals tab, we see different endpoints that have been learned by APIC. Going back to the app and under the node, we see those same nodes that are learned by the APIC that are shown in the app as well. That brings us to the end of the visibility use case. Let's look at the next use case, network stitching. Let's start by looking at the BIG-IP where the configuration is clean. There are no VLANs, self-IPs, or routes that are configured on the BIG-IP. Let's go back to the app and go to the L2 to L3 stitching tab. Let's choose a logical device cluster from the drop-down list. The app already has some filtering based on the type of BIG-IP form factor and also the redundancy state. So based on if the BIG-IP is a virtual or a physical form factor, or if it is in a high availability or standalone mode, the drop-down will display only those logical device clusters. Once the logical device cluster is selected, it will display the APIC information in read-only mode about the logical device cluster, and it will also display the VLAN tags 21 and 22 from the logical device cluster. Once these VLANs are moved from available to selected, they are available to you to manage them. Once you click on Manage Selected, at this point, you can add the VLAN associated with an interface and also create a self-IP on the BIG-IP. The interface list that you see here is pulled from the BIG-IP. So based on the BIG-IP, the interface list is populated. Once you click on Submit, the app is going to configure the VLAN, the self-IP on the BIG-IP. At this point, you can even edit and delete these VLANs and the self-IPs from the application itself. If we go to the BIG-IP, we see the VLANs that have been created and associated with their respective VLANs. Going back to the app, if we go into the Visibility tab and look at the VLAN table, we now see the VLANs which we have stitched this configuration. And if we go into the virtual table, we will see the virtuals and the pools are now in available state since the network has been stitched. Now let's look at how you can manage this configuration for your day N once you have done your initial config. Going back to the APIC and the logical device cluster, let's change the VLAN tag from say NCAP22 to NCAP25. Once we modify this VLAN, we go back to the app, we select the modified VLAN, and we see a little warning sign present there, which indicates that the VLAN tag on the APIC is not in consistency with what is configured on the BIG-IP. At this point, you have an option to change this VLAN tag on the BIG-IP from the application itself. So we are going to change the VLAN tag from 22 to 25 to reflect what is on the APIC right now. If we go back to the BIG-IP, we see the VLAN tag has been modified. We can do this the other way around itself. If there is a user that changes the VLAN tag on the BIG-IP, and let's do that here from say VLAN 21 to 26. If we go back to our app, we choose that particular VLAN, and we see that we have an out of sync status displayed, which means what is present on the BIG-IP is not consistent with what is on the app. And at this point, you have the option to either take the config from BIG-IP and put it into the app, or take what is on the app and put it into the BIG-IP. So let's sync what's on the app back to our BIG-IP, because we do not want users to make out-of-band changes on the BIG-IP. If we go back to the app, we see our VLAN tag has changed from 26 back to 21. This brings us to the end of network stitching. Now let's move to the next use case, which is deploying application services. You can configure applications from the L4 to L7 App Services tab. You can choose a partition or create a new one. You can create an application, and at this point you get displayed a stub code, a sample code, which you can modify to post to the BIG-IP. Here we are changing the virtual IP address as well as the pool members that are going to be assigned to the pool. Once this JSON payload is submitted, this configuration is going to be ported on the BIG-IP. Going to the BIG-IP, we see the partition that we created as well as the application that we created through the L4 L7 Services tab. Going back to the app, we can even view this from the visibility. We choose the partition created, and under the VIP and the node table, we can see the virtuals and the pools and the members that we created. This brings us to the end of the demo. Thank you for watching.